Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is having a great Monday. Hope you're all staying safe, sound, sane. If you're staying inside, self-isolating, social distancing, whatever they're calling it, wherever you are. Hope you're all doing very well. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. Yesterday we did a watch-along of the first episode of Dark Side of the Ring. The Chris Benoit two-part episode. We did the first episode. We'll do another watch-along for that when the second episode comes out. But today we're going to do a watch-along of a match from WrestleMania 13. Yes, today, as of recording, is the 23rd of March. So that means it is 23 years since WrestleMania 13 emanated live on pay-per-view. The event, of course, took place from the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago, Illinois, and arguably the most famous match from that show. One of the more, I would say, probably forgettable WrestleManias in WWE history, and took place, of course, in 1997 on the 23rd of March. But yeah, one of the more forgettable WrestleManias, I would say, in WWE history. And going back and looking at it, it's probably because there was just so much going on at the time. You look at that start of the year in 1997, and it's just chaos in WWE. It really is just chaos. I mean, the start of the year, you have the Royal Rumble and Shawn Michaels winning back the WWE Championship, and then in February he's releasing it because of vacating it because of the knee injury that might end his career, and at the same time he loses his smile. Before that, they were building to a WrestleMania 12 rematch between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Of course, that match doesn't happen. Around that time as well, you have the ECW invasion. Around that time, Raw does its lowest ever rating. It does the show from Berlin, Germany, and then they transition to Raw is War. There is so much going on at that period of time in WWE that WrestleMania almost becomes secondary. It just becomes, because the main event of the show, The Undertaker versus Sid, almost doesn't get decided till a few weeks prior. And recently we had Bret Hart on the Broken Skull Sessions with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they spoke a little bit about this WrestleMania match that they had and kind of the way they found out. And Steve Austin and Bret Hart were sort of saying they found out whenever it was advertised on the television. They just went, oh, it's going to be a submission match between them both. So it's a really it's a strange time in WWE. After this, I must say, I've been watching quite a lot of 1997 WWE over the last few months, just because it's such a fascinating time in not only WWE but professional wrestling in general. Obviously, the height of the Monday Night Wars and the rise of Steve Austin, the Montreal Screwjob, so much going on at that period of time. And after WrestleMania 13, when you have the turn of Bret Hart and you have the rise of Steve Austin as the babyface and all of that stuff, and the rise of the Hart Foundation with Bret Hart, Owen Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, the British Bulldog, and Brian Pillman, which I think is just such an underrated faction. I don't think it gets talked about, mainly because it wasn't really around that long. It was only around like 3 or 4 months. Obviously, before the Screwjob, before Pillman's unfortunate death, and before everyone left the WWE because of the Screwjob, and excluding Owen Hart. WWE got really hot and really well. It obviously did get really hot, but it got really good to watch after WrestleMania 13, and really enjoyable to watch. And it would take a while before WWE could turn the tide when it came to the ratings. But it's a fascinating time in WWE. Is my point, my long-winded point that I'm talking about there. But today on the watch along, we're going to watch a match from the show, probably the best match. Well, no, not probably the best match from the show, which of course is the submission match between Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin, the famous double turn. Going into the match, you had Steve Austin as a heel, Bret Hart as the face. I would use those terms loosely because prior to WrestleMania, Bret Hart has the steel cage match on Raw against Sid Vicious, or Psycho Sid, for the WWE Championship. Loses because of Steve Austin, goes off on one, pushes Vince McMahon to the floor, cuts a promo saying it's BS, that he's getting screwed all the time. I mean, if only you knew, Bret, what was to come, honestly. But does that shoot and really is the catalyst of what is to come from WWE into the direction that they're going in and all of that stuff. And Bret Hart and Steve Austin, they'd had a feud for a while at this point. They'd had the match at Survivor Series. They'd had the Steve Austin winning the Royal Rumble, but when Bret Hart really should have won it and got screwed there, and they'd had face off in the final four. So people thought their feud was kind of over, but it was continued due to Shawn Michaels' injury. And it was going to be settled at WrestleMania in a submission match with Ken Shamrock as the special guest referee. This was sort of Shamrock's introduction into the company before becoming a full-time wrestler himself. He was billed as the UFC fighter and the world's most dangerous man. At the time, WWE and UFC had a sort of working relationship, I would say, which is crazy now, thinking about it in 2020, how you would think about it. But WWE was actually promoting some of their shows. If you go back and watch the Raws, they talk about UFC's upcoming pay-per-views, the struggles that UFC were having at the time with the government, especially in New York, with banning mixed martial arts and all of that stuff. So, very interesting match, very interesting time, and obviously the best match on the show, which we'll have a look at. So, to give a bit of a background of how we're going to do it, I've got up here the WWE Network on my tablet device. Go to pay-per-views, find WrestleMania, go to WrestleMania 13, and then WWE have the sort of blocks of the timestamps for the show. We're going to click on the Bret Hart-Steve Austin match, and I'll give a bit of a countdown, press play, and then we'll get going with the watch-along. Okay, we've got the network up here. We've got, I've clicked on the timestamp for the Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin match, and it goes to immediately a freeze frame of Bret Hart with his head in his hands. I believe this was following the Raw when he gets screwed in the steel cage match against Psycho Sid for the WWE Championship. So we'll do a bit of a countdown and then we'll get going. So let you get that ready and do the start of the countdown. 3, 2, 1, go. It's funny that the theme music for WrestleMania as well is the actually the entrance music for Linda McMahon whenever she would make an appearance for WWE. The size of Ken Shamrock there is massive. He's like huge. Great condition, right? I'm sure he is, Vince. Ken Shamrock just was ginormous, and I've said this quite a lot, especially recently. He's going in the Impact Hall of Fame, isn't he? But it's criminal that he's not in the WWE Hall of Fame, considering the period of time of which he was in WWE, obviously 97, 98, 99, some of the biggest times in WWE's history, in terms of the amount of people watching and some of the reactions that he got. I mean, especially when you consider some of the people that are in the Hall of Fame, which is questionable. It's got to be a Hall of Famer. And then this is one of my favourite Steve Austin entrances. Awesome. Quite literally having the glass break. Obviously, the glass break in his theme song is well known, but actually to have the glass break there in the arena as the entrance is awesome. I believe they tried to redo that entrance, didn't they? And I can't remember off the top of my head whether it was at SummerSlam 97 when he broke his neck against Owen Hart, or if it's Survivor Series 97. When once again he's facing Owen Hart, and I can't remember off the top of my head which one it is, but they tried to do that entrance again with the glass, and the way they do it is they just send a little pulse of like electricity or something like that, and it just obviously breaks the glass. And they tried to do it again at SummerSlam or Survivor Series, and just half of it broke, or just a little bit of it broke, and it just it looked terrible. But obviously in this one it's awesome. Chicago, Illinois, one of the best wrestling cities ever. Listen to that ovation for Steve Austin. I mean, Steve Austin at the time here, he's hot even as a heel, but after this, once he would turn into a babyface and just a reaction like this and that, obviously Bret Hart's getting a reaction there, but he's not exactly getting a full babyface reaction. So the match is spoken about for how much of the double turn. It's almost already happened at this point, hasn't it? Bret Hart's become a bit of a whining. He's still a babyface technically, but he's become a bit of a whiner. Talks about being screwed all the time. And Steve Austin just didn't change. He just kept being Steve Austin. He just He was just a heel that got over. And even when he was turned, I'm using those with quotation marks, his character really didn't change all as much. He just sort of changed the people that he was stunning, I suppose, and going after. You think about it as well, you think of, and this was again, it's quite apropos that we had Bret Hart on the Broken Skull sessions recently talking about how this feud and his matches in '97. Bret Hart honestly was on such a roll in 1997, and he would say he was probably doing his best work. Obviously, you have this match against Steve Austin at WrestleMania. You have the match he had with The Undertaker at SummerSlam. The match itself at that Survivor Series, in terms of the Shawn Michaels match, was a good match as well. Obviously, you have like I said earlier, you have the Hart Foundation. It's '97 has the Canadian Stampede 5-on-5 match as well, which is one of my favourite matches ever. We'll probably do a watch along on that at some point. I'm sure we will. And yeah, that match is awesome. And you can always tell by the crowd, like you can hear the crowd here. Austin goes into the post. You can always tell by what is the big match on the show just by the crowd reaction. Of course, the crowd is into Psycho Sid versus The Undertaker later on in the show, but the crowd's hot for this one because they know this is the biggest match on the show, without a shadow of a doubt. And you got to remember, this is a submission match, which is, I mean, a notoriously difficult match to do. It goes into Lou Albano there and Tony Atlas. Tony Atlas actually has not changed as well. He looks exactly the same today as he does there. Still like completely jacked, completely ginormous. And if you want to get like a really good look at Tony Atlas, we did the Dark Side of the Ring watch along yesterday. Go back and watch the season 1 of Dark Side of the Ring, the Bruiser Brody episode, the murder of Bruiser Brody. Tony Atlas just comes across tremendous in that episode, as and not a lot of people do when you talk about the whole Bruiser Brody situation, but Tony Atlas really does there. But as I was saying before, with the submission matches, Steve Austin's attacking the guy selling drinks there. That's awesome. Yeah, when a submission match is notoriously difficult as well, because obviously sometimes to get the crowd into the match itself, you have the near falls, the false finishes of the 1-2 kick out, and submission matches you just don't have that. You know, it's really almost difficult to do a false finish unless you like lock on the submission. You think they're going to tap out and they get to the rope. That's almost how you do it. Yeah, Jerry Laws just said hit that drunk with a jacket on. I was just thinking that when I saw it. Like he was rubbing Bret Hart on the head. Like I get the whole he's doing it there to Ken Shamrock. Are you insane? Shamrock just turned around and smacked him in the face. I just don't get that sometimes with fans and in the crowd and with that sort of stuff. Like, you know, I get maybe the whole like, oh, I want to touch Bret Hart. Even that, to be honest, just saying it out loud is bizarre. Oh, I want to touch him. Okay. But why would you rub someone on the head and all that sort of stuff? Just, oh, God, people are weird, aren't they? People are weird sometimes. So that guy rubbing Bret Hart on the head, and then rubbing Ken Shamrock on the head. Are you insane? I mean, the amount of alcohol that must have been in the system to even consider doing that at the time. Shamrock turned around and just sock him in the face. But they're talking about, again, they spoke about in the Broken Skull sessions about how they fought through the crowd. Because you notice, I mean, in terms of security there, I mean, there isn't really any security. I don't know if that guy in the orange jacket is security or just a guy trying to get people out of the way. But as they're fighting through the crowd, they said that they sort of cleared it with management earlier on and just they basically went, okay, how are you going to get through? And Austin and Bret Hart said to the officials, well, we got Ken Shamrock with us, which is, you know, in terms of clearing an area, is pretty much as good a clearing anyone out the way as you would want. What is your opinion as well of the red, white, and blue ropes in the ring? Obviously, I'm as a Brit, I guess it doesn't mean as much to me. I don't know. For me, it always sort of every time I see the red, white, and blue ropes, it spoke to me about where WWE was at the time. Like I really associate those ropes with the mid-90s when maybe WWE wasn't doing their best and when they maybe weren't at their hottest. It was sort of older, passe, I guess. Whereas when they went to the full red ropes and not having blue mats on the floor, having black mats on the floor, not having blue ring post, black stairs, everything got a bit grittier, which is what WWE needed at the time. It didn't need to be wholesome, it didn't need to be family friendly, it didn't need to be as clean cut, I would say. And it's almost strange, isn't it? Because you have that backdrop of the red, white, and blue ropes, the blue ring post, the old WWF logo, and all of that stuff, and the type of match that this is when it becomes gritty, rough, dirty, just almost doesn't fit in that setting, does it? It's strange. I really like the point that Steve Austin made as well, and I used to never understand because I always think for the machine and the cardio machine that Bret Hart was in the ring, he would always look like you see there. They're doing a bit of a close up now on him. Always heavily breathing out the mouth. Always looked really tired and all of that sort of stuff. And I would always think, why is he like that? Because I know that he isn't tired. Bret Hart has wrestled for 60 minutes several times. Why is he like that? And then Steve Austin almost explained it of he's trying to explain or trying to show to the audience like I'm in a real fight here. Like I'm exhausted. I'm fighting for my life. That's why I'm heavily breathing. That's why my mouth's open. Like I am in a fight right now. And then once he explained that, I always notice it now, and it's just the little things. That's what makes wrestling great, isn't it? And that's what makes a match great or a moment great. Is little things that maybe you think that you've noticed that other people haven't, or little things that speak to you more than other moments. Just it's little things like that. So every time I watch a Bret Hart match now and I see that, I just go, oh, that's great. That's great. That's a little sort of thing I hadn't noticed before. As Bret Hart works over Steve Austin's knee now, and Steve Austin only has one knee brace on at the time. It's mad to see. It almost looks weird to see Steve Austin without like another knee brace on, because obviously towards the end of his career, and well, for the majority of career, had two giant knee braces on. At one point, he actually like started to, do stuff with them. He would have like red knee braces on or blue ones. But it just enhanced his character, didn't it? Having the sort of the bionic tough man stunner, bionic tough man, BMF. It almost added to his character, didn't it? Or of like what he said with the neck break and all of that stuff. I was actually going back and watching again. So I've been watching a lot of 1997 WWE recently, and I was watching the last In Your House pay-per-view they ever did, DX In Your House. And Steve Austin's facing, funny enough, The Rock on it from the Intercontinental Championship. And I was thinking, so Steve Austin broke his neck in August of that year, and like a proper serious neck break. The guy was like paralyzed for like several seconds, couldn't move anything. Let's get this spot. I love this spot. The crowd's going nuts as well. Now, my question as well was Bret Hart the first to come up with that spot? I'm probably wrong in terms of the figure four around the ring post. It's an awesome spot. It looks great. Really innovative at the time as well. And the story's great there as well, isn't it? He's working over the knee, then does the figure four around the knee, around the ring post. Just again, it's little things, isn't it? You notice the guy there just got a massive soda spilt all over him. Don't have your can of soda near the ring bell. It fell right in his lap as well. Oh, you can see it. You can see it on that steel chair. Now he looks like he peed himself all night. It's like soda, I swear. But yeah, as I was saying before with the Steve Austin thing, so he's working the Rocket DX in your house. That was 4 months after he broke his neck. I was just thinking that just wouldn't happen today. I mean, if a guy had that similar injury today, there'd be questions whether if he was going to work again, he'd be out the ring for at least like a year. Bang. I was Chris Jericho a couple of weeks ago on Dynamite did a chair shot to the head of someone, and it wasn't. It started a lot of conversation actually because it wasn't really necessarily a chair shot to the head. He got his hands up, it was light, but there were still questions around. Should they even really be doing that? Because we've seen as the years go on and more information comes out about concussions and CTE that even the slightest headshot can cause a concussion. I mean, people in like football, soccer over here, can get concussion from just heading a football. Or again, my point is there's so much that's coming out about concussions nowadays, and there was questions about whether even getting your hands up, should they necessarily be doing it? There's a high risk there. And you look at there with that chair shot to the head. Necessarily, was it a chair shot to the head? It was more to his back of his neck, but even that, you just sort of go. I suppose this was just the start of it. When you got like a couple of years into it, around the late 90s, those chair shots to the head just became absolutely brutal. I said, look at that shot. Is that Bret Hart's daughter crying there? It's a great shot, isn't it? And those crowd shots, sometimes they pay off and sometimes they really don't. There are so many times WWE have panned to the crowd, especially in modern WWE, which they love to do, don't they? They love the crowd shot, and a lot of the time they see the reaction, but they've got the crowd shot on the screen as well, so they notice themselves, like, got the head in their hands, they notice themselves, and then they do something stupid. But if they pay it off, if it's done right, it can totally work. The one that springs to mind is when, do you remember when The Miz won the WWE Championship in 2010, and you had the angry Miz girl, which I wonder what she's doing today. But even at one point, they had a Stu. But even at one point, they had her come back, didn't they? And have her actually present a Slammy later on that year, which was great. It just shows, doesn't it? I mean, it's the littlest thing can work. The Boston Crab. Listen to that pop for a Boston Crab. The only guy that could get a pop for a Boston Crab like that now is Chris Jericho, because it's his finish. But like they said, that's the difficult thing with when it comes to submission matches. It's a different psychology. It's a different psychology. You have to make them pop for a submission. You have to make them pop for a rope break or anything like that. And I suppose it's clever psychology. We've seen the ring bow. We've seen the ring bow. We've seen the steel chair. There are no disqualifications when it comes to submission match. So why wouldn't you use the weapons and anything like that? It's all about getting your opponent to a point where they submit in a submission hold, whether that applies to using weapons or not. It's good psychology, which is no shocker when it comes to a Bret Hart match. Those mats outside the ring, like, I think now that you look at any WWE show now, the whole ringside area obviously is matted like it is there, but like it goes up to the barricade, and it's very, very safe. Like there, they've just got these obviously like gym mats on clear concrete, and I kind of miss that aesthetic. I almost don't like things being complete in Spanish now. It goes down again. Was that Spanish announcer or whoever producer? Vince checking on him. It's going to the table. I love chaos like that. See, this is where Austin gets his colour. I always think now about when it comes to people, people getting colour or people getting bladed and getting blood in their matches, especially in the ringside area like that. Regardless of if they, obviously all the wrestlers nowadays would be tested for any blood issues when it comes to, hepatitis. It was a bad one, HIV, all that kind of stuff, blood diseases. I suppose they have to be careful when imagine you're sitting in the front row and you just get sprayed with someone's blood. I mean, that's, I guess, bad enough, but almost for the competitors themselves, when they have an open wound like that, what happens if someone, spits at them? Or something like that. I mean, it's so much. I can understand why people don't get, as much colour nowadays. There's a lot of risk associated with it, a lot more that we know, but it just adds so much to a match, doesn't it? For me, like in the right match, it just takes a 7 to a 10 or 7 to a 9, just that extra bit. And again, maybe that's because that's what I was brought up on. I think you think of wrestling, especially in WWE, in like the early to mid 2000s, they get blood all the time. So think of a Triple H pay-per-view match, literally that had blood in almost every match. At one point, his head was starting to, get looking like a Bruiser Brody head with the amount of blading he was doing. But it was great. I loved it. I think of Triple H. It was after WrestleMania 22. There was a triple threat match between Triple H, Cena, and Edge. And honestly, you go back and watch that match. The amount of blood that's on his face is insane. Bret Hart walked over his Austin's knee there with the chair. This game was amazing. I just again because it's a different time. But did you hear the crowd reacting there to just to the shots to the knee? And nowadays that would barely get a reaction. Man, look at Austin's face as well. The amount of blood, and it's just again, it's the aesthetic of it. It's like you look at the mat there. The mat's like stained in blood, and I always loved that aesthetic of it. Like not completely clean, dirty. I would love it on like a pay-per-view, like with this low blow. Like they wouldn't. I'm not sure they would change the mats, which obviously going back thinking about now is insane. But just the fact that you would have that on the mat for the rest of the show and little things like that, I just loved. Because it'd be the same sometimes with UFC fights. If you had a fight early on the card that was particularly bloody, and then that was just a mat for the rest of the show, the octagon would just be covered in blood. Like you can see there, look at that mat. It's just absolutely drenched in blood. You think about it as well. They with this type of match, they just don't do this kind of match anymore, do they? In terms of again being just dirty, blood everywhere. It's just different, and it's just so compelling to watch, so different to watch. And I suppose in terms of the WrestleMania itself, this isn't a bad WrestleMania. Like I said in the intro, it's almost a WrestleMania that's just an issue with everything that was going on in WWE at the time. It really was. It really was just so much going on, and WWE in such a period of transition. Look at Steve Austin's face. I suppose the fact that he's bald just adds to it as well, because the blood almost goes all the way over the back of his head. But yeah, this WrestleMania was just almost like an afterthought, just because of everything that was going on. And I really do feel for WWE at the time, because they planned for a year to have the Bret Hart Shawn Michaels rematch, and of course that never happened. And supposedly Bret was going to get the victory in that, and that's why they think that Shawn Michaels had the knee injury and lost his smile, because Shawn Michaels was back not long after, a couple months after he was in the ring again. Although he came back, won the tag titles with Steve Austin. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels have a big fight backstage, and then Shawn Michaels disappears for a little bit again. Like I said, this obviously 97 is of course remembered for the screw job, but there is just so much that's going on in WWE prior to that, and including this match, and including all the Bret Hart Shawn Michaels stuff. But the TV was so good, considering from what was terrible at the start of the year. You go watch those Raws from January 97. They're awful. They're so poor, honestly. And we're going to get the iconic shot soon. Now, look at that. Look at that. That's just such a great shot, isn't it? Look at it. And in fairness to Ken Shamrock, like my boy's opinion, and listen to the crowd as well, chanting for Austin. Who's the heel? Remember? Look at that. That's the shot. The crowd's going mad. And yes, saying about Shamrock, in my opinion, with referees is just the best referees are the ones you don't notice, because you shouldn't. The referee's job is just to help the performers in the ring, and count the pinfall and enforce the rules. And in fairness, Shamrock's done that. He helped earlier on get him through the crowd, and we'll see him get involved in a minute, but he's done a great job. Look at Austin. Such a sour job. And that's the match. What a match. Those last 5-10 minutes are just phenomenal. And that finish is just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I mean, once Austin gets the colour, it just goes from, like I said, a 7 to a 10. It really does. Which is, again, that was my point at the time. That's why sometimes stuff like colour and blading and blood is just so important. It just adds to the drama. It tells an extra layer to the story, and that finish is awesome. And the crowd are going nuts because it was best match on the show. As Austin passed out on the floor in a pile of blood, and Shamrock's pointing at him going, "Are you okay?" He's not moving. You okay? Man, get some medical attention out there. And guys passed out of blood loss in the ring. Jeez. What a match day. I said the crowd's popping for it, and, they're appreciative of the match, but Austin's the star on this one, isn't he? It's the real breakout Steve Austin performance. And the big baby face. Here we go. This is the double turn that's going to start right now. Well, the double turn, I guess, already happened when he was in the sharpshooter. As he's about to lock it in again. Man, look at that throw. Look at Shamrock. I mean, you just would not want to mess with Ken Shamrock. Look at the size. And knowing he's a legit fighter. He's a scary dude. Imagine prime Shamrock against, Brock Lesnar. Modern day Brock Lesnar in a WWE ring. That'd be such a money match, wouldn't it? Again, you can hear the reaction now of the crowd to Bret Hart. And just like that, double turn's just done so easily. Just an attack afterwards. He was already getting a mixed reception. And the just the double turns done, putting the finger up to the crowd. See, this is what I liked about Bret as well. I really, obviously everyone loves the babyface Bret Hart character, but I love the heel Bret Hart character. It's just that little bit of edge to him. And in the following night on Raw, he'll come out and he'll cut the promo about the USA and all that sort of stuff. Here we go. There's Mike Chioda taking one of the worst stunners ever. Looks like a Linda McMahon stunner, that does. Speaking of having her music earlier on. Selling the injury. It's subtlety. When you look back on it, you can tell exactly what they're doing. He gets passes out with the blood loss. He didn't give up. Bret Hart attacks him afterwards. He walks out on his own 2 feet. The reason the medical team came out, because they didn't want him to, really look like he was given anything. He's a badass who walks out on his own, even though he's on one leg and passed out of blood loss. It's really smart. It's really smart booking. Clever booking. And a great finish to a great match. One of the best, one of my favourite WrestleMania matches. Best match on this show. I've almost forgotten WrestleMania with everything that was going on. And commentary's doing great in putting them over. That was a real underrated commentary trio, that as well. McMahon, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. Awesome. Awesome match. And they're putting over how much of a tough man, how much of a bad man that Steve Austin is. Awesome. Not many people could walk out and he's walking out of here. Toughest guy in the WWE. There's there's still going on here. Look, there's blood on the mat. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.